This morning, we're diving in on chapter 3 of our journey through James. The first week was really good. It was a little mixed in with a church business meeting, and then last week, and then now this week, and we have 2 more weeks as we go through the book of James because there's 5 chapters in James. And this talk is all about taming the tongue. The song you're going to hear after this to close in worship is by Keith Green. It's a song that he wrote called Rushing Wind. And it's one where I thought it'd be kind of cool because if you ever get bored and you're on YouTube, anybody ever get bored and surf YouTube? Come on, anybody? All right. Look up Keith Green and his teachings, because he talks about this in one of his, based off another teaching by Leonard Ravenhill. But James chapter 3, again, it's a blueprint for how Christians ought to act. The whole book is. Some would argue it's a blueprint for how the church should function. And as we turn our attention to this book of the Bible, this specific chapter, James teaches us about the immense power that our words hold. We can tear somebody up, we can tear somebody down, or we can build somebody up. We can bring life, or we can bring death. You know, we can do all sorts of things by the words we say. And though as Christians, we're always striving to say the right things, we sometimes have a little bit of the flesh moment, okay? And we just react in the moment, we say things, and sometimes we're able to look back and say, I'm sorry. But as a whole, we look at this and we say, you know, God has to help us in our daily speech, because let's be honest, people push buttons. It can be at work, it can be out in public, it can be a person driving in front of you, it can be somebody in your own home. Okay, and we have those moments where it's hard to tame the tongue, and the book of James has a lot to say about it. So our first point this morning is that the power and influence of the tongue, it has a lot of pull, okay? It has a lot of pull, and sometimes we're pushed to those difficult times, and other times we're pushed to those difficult moments, and we end up saying, God, give me the words to say, and out comes life. You speak life into a situation. James, by addressing the role of teachers and their responsibility to use their words wisely, is specifically who he's talking about in this scripture. But let's go one step further. If he's addressing the role of teachers and their responsibility, then that means that that's probably everyone that has kids, because you're all teachers. Okay, he's talking about people in a place of leadership. He's talking about people that represent Christ on a daily basis, which is Christians, that we have a role to do, we have a role to say. And it can be quite honest with you that we can have those moments where all of a sudden something came out. I had that a little bit this week. You know, I'm part of different boards and everything, and so there was one moment where I did it not in a bad way. It wasn't like anything, but it was one of those moments where I serve on this board and I keep being, you know, oh, he's the mild-mannered, he's that, all of that. And finally it's like, I have an opinion about this and I'm just going to let it go now, you know, and it wasn't done in an un-Christ-like way. It was very, very well, very nicely put and everything. And it was just, we have those moments, but when we're heated up in those moments where we can share a word and you know that you can let something fly, okay, and you know that you might even be able to win the conversation, but at what cost, okay? So you won the conversation, so you've made your point. At what cost did that come? Did you burn a bridge? Did you wreck a relationship? You know, instead of saying something even just nicer, you know, about any situation. So James here, he compares the tongue to a small but powerful part of our body, capable of guiding and shaping our lives. And James emphasizes the importance of self-control and the potential for destructive consequences if our words go unchecked. We read in James chapter 3, 1-5. And this is the thrust of each message through the book of James, is to break down the verses. But it says, not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and driven by strong winds, are they steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go? Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but makes its great boasts. And that's, that I love the examples there, because even then there were ships, and a simple little rudder can make the ship go one way or the other. Horses, we're all familiar with horses. The one animal I absolutely do not enjoy getting up close to, it's a horse. I just, it might be a flashback to my Uncle Bud days, out on his farm. I remember my cousin getting bucked off once, and it was just like, oh, that's not good. And what Uncle Bud did to the horse later, we won't talk about right now. He didn't put it down, but he ended up in the hospital as a result. So the horse taught him a lesson. And everybody that has an Uncle Bud is going to have good stories. Okay, I'm just saying. But it's interesting. Even a big, massive horse, no matter what breed. Okay, you go all the way up to your Clydesdales, and there's probably different types of horses bigger than a Clydesdale, but a bit in the mouth and a rider on it can steer that horse just by one thing in their mouth. And in this book of James, it draws that comparison that our words, you can derail your spouse, you can derail your children, you can derail a person if given the right opportunity. And what does that accomplish? Okay, we've all been there. We all have those moments that aren't so proud. I've shared this story before, where I can occasionally, I just let something fly, and it's not a cuss or anything like that. It's just, I let something fly, and I'm like, ooh, I proved my point, but I'm like, that wasn't the right thing to say. I was at a local store a couple years ago, and this older gentleman was getting very upset with the store manager, who I knew. And you need to fix that step. You need to all this. And he's just berating my friend, who I was nothing to do with the conversation. I was just down the aisle, and I'm just like, wow, someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed. And so the manager kept saying, well, it's painted yellow and everything. Yeah, but you should get in here, and that's a step that, and I just walked by, and my friend saw me coming, and I just said, or you can lift up your feet. And I just kept walking. And I was like, oh, Lord, just forgive me now, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have said that. And the guy, the manager, just looked at me. He's like, gave me the mad nod, that sort of thing. That's how men communicate. Well done. What's up? Don't do that. So it was one of those moments that I wasn't proud of, but I was like, that's me. I try a lot of times to hold things in, but once in a while it's like, okay, I'm going to go to bat, and I just do a flyby comment, and away we go. So the power and influence of the tongue can steer our lives. It can steer where we're going. It can steer a lot of different things. It can bring a lot of peace to the house. It can bring a lot of stress to the house. And same with the workplace or our own personal lives. A lot of things that before we say it, do we think about it? All right. Goes with emails, goes with a lot of different things. How many have queued up something to go out on Facebook, and you thought about it, like, no, delete. Okay. It's one of those things we got to think about what we say. And I can say I struggled with this a lot, back many years ago, going through hurts in ministry. And I realized that the tongue, and as pointed out here, it can bring life, and it can also bring death into a situation. And there's dangerous fire of the tongue. James compares the tongue to a fire that can set a forest ablaze. He highlights how such a small tongue can cause great harm, leading to division, strife, and destruction. So there's a lot of social experiments that people do, okay? Again, you see it on Reels. People will go up and, they'll go into a grocery store, and they'll act like they don't have anything, and they'll go up and say, hey, can you help me with a bag of chips? I'm really hungry and all that. And they do that, and the person helps them, and they'll say, well, actually, I really don't need chips. I just wanted to see who would help me. Here's $500 for being such a fantastic person and helping out and all of that. And it was one of those moments where you can have a lot of influence in life by what you put out there. I did this once a while ago when the chiropractic office down on School Street, is that, Val? By our house on Royalton Street. Dr. Chad, when they were starting to change that over from a gas station into a chiropractic office, it was at a time when Wapaka was yearning for a good coffee shop. And this is before Aquamos, this is before Java Jive and what we have now. And so I took a picture of it, put my Adobe Photoshop skills to test, and I made it into a promo for Starbucks coming in 2018, and I shared it to Facebook. Thing went viral, and I was just like, yes, mission accomplished. You know, it was funny. We had some good laughs, and it was totally on purpose. It was like a joke. You know, it was April 1st, and it just had to go with it. And my attorney friend, like, you are a cruel man, Bob, you know, after they found out everything. And it just reiterates how much one person can have influence over something. All you have to do is put something out there, and you could start a fire. You could start a blaze going through, because we live in a TikTok world where everybody gets their information in 30 seconds or less. All right. And this is a difficult space for businesses, churches, anybody that has a message trying to get their word out, to realize if it's not 30 seconds or less for a younger crowd, scroll, we're past it. And this is the problem that trickles into politics and world affairs and all of these things, even in our own discipleship. If it's a 30-second clip, it's catchy, flashy, got it, scroll, okay? And we could put something out there that's completely fake, like the Starbucks that was coming on the little corner there. You know, it's like, really? You thought there was going to be a Starbucks there? Cold Stone Creamery, maybe. But, you know, it was just all of this that you put something out there, you can steer a ship. You can command a presence just because it's what people want to hear. It doesn't make it right, because the fire is the tongue is a dangerous thing. In James chapter 3, 5 through 8, and I'll say 3, 5b, that's the second half of chapter 5. It says, consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and itself on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. So he had a few things to say about the tongue, didn't he? He had a few things to say, that what you say, what I say, can cause a lot of damage. You can berate somebody, or you can build them up. You can blow off somebody, or you can speak life into them. Even a simple hi, how are you doing, can bring a lot of life to somebody and what they're going through. And in the body of Christ, I got to be honest with you, sometimes a lot of us have been in all different types of churches. I realize Radiant is not your first church. We've all come from different backgrounds. We've all come from either big churches or small churches. And sometimes the most reckless use of the tongue happens in the church. This is not a rebuke to us this morning. I'm just saying, in Christianity, sometimes this is the most difficult place by either receiving negative words or giving negative words. And ministry has to start in the house of the Lord. It has to start in the home where we're fellowshipping with one another. When Jesus says they'll know you're my disciples by the love you have for one another, sometimes in Christianity, there's not a lot of love. I mean, you have ministries out there, you can search them on Google or YouTube or whatever, that they build their ministry off of tearing down other ministries. Isn't that something? And I think to myself, how messed up is that? You know, there's a lot of preachers out there that I don't agree with. And I'm sure there's people that have come and gone from here that don't agree with me. And there's people that have come and gone that don't agree with other churches in our community or in the city or televangelists and all of that. But I end up having a little bit of a difficult time, even though so-and-so might be on a national level and known on a national level, a televangelist and all of that. I have a difficult time as a pastor throwing somebody like that under the bus. because it's one of those things that if that person is off base, if your brother or sister in the church has sinned against you, if somebody has let you down, I think the better stance is to just turn and offer words to somebody else, or just let it go. Or, and the likelihood of on a national level, you could send an email out that's very loving, very caring, getting your point across. They may not ever read it, but you've made your point. You've done that instead of going after somebody. There's a lot of reasons in this world that, there's a lot of different organizations and publications and all that make their life on throwing people under the bus, judging, critiquing, all of these things. And it's not a helpful thing. I shared this story this week, but I keep going back to the story of Noah. Where again, he had all this stuff going on, but the story ended very unglamorously. If you haven't read to the very end of the story of Noah, check it out. He has this huge experience with the ark, saving the animals, saving mankind. God saw a man that was blameless. And at the end of the story, after this mountaintop experience, you find him in scripture, drunk and naked on a beach after all of that. Now, of that time, and if that was translated into today's time, if that was let's put out somebody that has a lot of opinion, that everybody has a lot of opinions on. If that was a Joel Osteen, it would be ravenous, the publication that he would get from the mainstream and the Christian scene, okay? But what did Noah's sons do when they found their father like that? They hid his nakedness. They wouldn't let people come and see him because Dad went bye-bye for a little bit. Okay? There was a lot of stress in Dad's life. There were a lot of moments that, he's basically the guy that him and his family that are saving and carrying out God's plan. And after that, have you ever had those big times where you're fried after a big event and you're gone. You're there, but you've clocked out. This is where Noah was. And what's sad sometimes about this is that sometimes, and again, I got to do a message on this again. In cases like that, when we had Ted Haggard here, he pointed out that there was a time where the world acted more like Christians to him than Christians acted to him. Does that make sense? The moral compass, the key person that restored Ted Haggard after, and I won't say the national ministries kicked him in his teeth, basically, and had him leave. And it was actually a written thing where he had to leave Colorado Springs by this panel, this board of national movements, which, again, we won't talk about. Who was the one person he attributed to bringing him back into the fold again and helping restore him? Again, you'll have your opinions about this. Oprah. Isn't that crazy? Oprah Winfrey brought him and cared enough about him to call him and say, I've seen what happened. You're the president of the National Evangelical Association of Evangelicals, all of this. What can I do to help you? That's amazing. So the power of what we say can bring life or it can bring death. And when we're in a place in our life that's struggling, be open to who God is going to use in our lives. God used all different types of things and people in the Bible. I said things because sometimes things talked. Balaam, talking donkey, hello. All right. There's all sorts of things that God will use to get our attention and bring life into us when we need it. So the tongue, it can bring a blessing, and it can bring a curse. Third point is the inconsistency of it. James points out the inconsistency of using our tongues to both bless and curse. He emphasizes that our speech should consistently reflect our identity as followers of Christ, using our words to bring an encouraging, loving, and righteous word to people. James challenges us to refrain from gossiping, from backbiting, from uttering harmful words, instead choosing to speak life. Everybody speak life, speak life. Okay. That's my best Toby Mac I have. So But it is true. Bringing life comes from our mouth, from our words, and just having the bandwidth really to notice when somebody's struggling and try to speak into them. When I can honestly say, when I'm facing customer service at a store or anything, if that person is, I can see they're having a bad day, okay, because you can see how they're treating the customer before you. I take it on myself to say, I'm going to bring a smile to that person's face. It's going to happen, all right? And usually it does, except the self-checkout person. That guy's always a jerk. All right, you'll get that later. But it's one of those things where I take it as a goal to say, I am going to get that person to smile. I'm going to get them to loosen up. And if the conversation's going and all of that stuff, eventually, if I can't get a smile, I will end up saying, you're doing an awesome job. That usually cracks a smile. Because we can bless people, and I've been in retail long enough. I was in retail a long time, been in factory, been other places, to know that it's nice to receive a kind word. Even if you're having a lousy day, you can still encourage somebody. And so, the inconsistency of blessing and curse. In James chapter 3, 9 through 12, it says, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth comes praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. Got to be one or the other. And then, how do we tame it? By gaining wisdom from above. James introduces the concept of wisdom from above, characterized by purity, by peace, by gentleness, by good fruit, the fruits of the Spirit. He contrasts this divine wisdom with early wisdom that led to envy, selfish ambition, disorder. And so he encourages us in this chapter to seek wisdom. Before we speak, seek wisdom. Before you send out that email, pray about it. Because sometimes those emails, sometimes those text messages come as a knee-jerk reaction to something you're dealing with. And it's very raw, it's very hurtful, it's very much an open wound right now, what you're dealing with. But it would be so therapeutic to just lambaste somebody. I get it. There's sometimes those moments where you're just like, oh, I could just dominate this conversation by letting something out, but it's not the thing that Christ would do. And what would it gain me? For you comic book nerd fans out there, the Avengers, Thanos, he snapped his finger. Half the population went away. And the question was asked, what did it cost you? And he said, everything. And he wasn't happy about it. The thing is that, yes, we could win a conversation. Yes, we can make our point and drive our point and all that, but what's it going to cost you? Because eventually, if like a lot of situations for many of us, yeah, you've stated your thing and now you kind of feel like a slug because you did it. And then you're going to have to go back and apologize because you realize you did wrong. And really, was it that beneficial then at that point? So James encourages us to seek wisdom. James chapter 3, 13 through 18, it says, who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. So we're always given opportunities. What are we going to do? What are we going to share? 2008, I bought a brand new Dodge Dakota. Loved that truck. Bought it from Neville from my friend Steve that worked there. It's fantastic. First new car I ever owned, really. Had a lot of old used cars, but it was one of those things I was very proud of and was happy with. I knew that with adopting James and Emma, we needed the extra room, and this truck provided that. It was just a great thing. It was even during the time that Dodge offered lifetime warranty on the powertrain. As long as you own it, it's covered. 3 days later, we're at Dairy Queen. Okay, nothing new there. And I'm sitting there with a group from the church, and this kid comes walking in. He's looking all around the store, and you know how you just have those moments like, oh, this one's for me, you know? He's like, I don't know who's driving the black pickup truck, but I put a little dent in it. Brand new. I go outside, he said, that's me, you know, and I stood up and I saw I was a kid, and I walk out and I'm like, little dent? The whole back quarter panel was pushed in. And he hit it with his dad's Eddie Bauer edition Ford Explorer. He's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, you know, dude, I just bought this truck 3 days ago, brand new from Neville, you know, and he's like, I'm so sorry I didn't, you know, I'm like, all right. I said, well, here's the upside of it. You just hit a pastor's truck. All right. And I'm the police chaplain, you know, and it was just kind of putting his mind at ease. He's like, okay. And he goes, so we don't have to call my parents? I said, oh, no, we do. We do. There's a little thing called insurance and police reports and all that. I said, is this your first accident? He said, yeah, I came in too fast. I go, well, this is going to be a learning experience for you. I said, number one, I'm not mad. I'm disappointed, but I'm not mad. We're going to work through this and everything. You could just see his demeanor change. I could have came out guns blazing, all right, and blasted that kid. And he was 17 years old, maybe 16, and just completely derailed him. And he'll always remember that moment. But instead, it's one of those things like, oh, going to cool down. Black metallic 4x4 truck smashed. But it is what it is. That's why we have insurance. Been through this before. I've been with the Skoggs relatives plenty of times to know what a car accident is. Adrian and Todd. I've had plenty of my own too. And so this is nothing new. But it was one of those experiences. And I just go back to Josh. My friends, his relatives, we openly talk about these things. It's funny how much our teen days, how we, like my dad, he got a letter from the insurance company one morning. It was like a Friday morning. He got it in the mail and it said, we're dropping you because Robert Adams lives in your home. It was like, wow, there we go. That's not good. But you know, I've been through all of that. So what do you do in a situation like that? Do you let your ire work up? Do you let your anger work up? Or do you say, this is a moment, this is a teaching moment here, and we will get through this? Same applies. And I realize every day can be a struggle. Same applies with our own families. Same applies with our coworkers. It may not be as big as a car accident, but we have those moments where we can just, boom, fly off the handle. And I'm preaching to myself as well. To pause and say, God, give me the wisdom to handle this situation, because the words I'm about to speak are either going to bring life or death. And if we can do it in a way, not saying you're going to back down from your opinion or anything like that, you got to state your case, but how you do it, how we speak, the words of grace that we use can make all the difference in the world to diffuse a situation. So I would urge us to reflect on these powerful words that James puts in this chapter, that we would commit to taming our tongue, using it. Even today, there might be a situation that comes up. With God's help, we can transform the way we communicate. Being intentional about blessing, encouraging, uplifting one another is huge. And it points to Christ, because sometimes the recipient of your blessings are going to be the person that they needed it that day. They needed to hear those words. So let's have the ushers come up this morning. Then we're going to listen to this last song. And this song really is all about asking God to challenge it, to take out the stuff that we don't need in our life. Because there are a lot of things in our life. I know myself and other people that I know, a lot of times what comes out is a result of multiple stresses piling up in life. And you've ever had that before where you just you said something to another person and they just completely blew up or derailed? You realize very quickly there's something bigger in the room. Like, why did that person blow up over this little thing? Because there's something bigger in the room. And you were just that breaking point that they could just blow up at. And so, how we respond to that, though, could diffuse that situation very quickly.